Everybody, welcome back to Miles and Mentors. Today we have Chris Jolly with us, also known as the Freight Coach. He's the founder of Freight Coach Logistics, the host of the Freight Coach podcast, where he's had hundreds of real, unfiltered conversations with the biggest voices in freight. With a background in the brokerage space and a passion for elevating the industry throughout mentorship and operational excellence, we're going to have one heck of a conversation today. I cannot wait to tap into that lived and learned knowledge with this guy. So stick with us because we have a great episode lined up for you right after this on Miles and Mentors.
Welcome to Miles and Mentors, the podcast that humanizes trucking, getting real life advice and insights from logistics professionals from all over the industry. We sit down with those seasoned mentors who have put in the miles with a mission to pass on the knowledge gained from years in the industry to you. Now buckle up and enjoy the show.
Hey, what's going on, Chris?
What? How? Not too much, man. I'm really looking forward to this. I was going to say, I need you to clip out that little intro of me. That's the nicest thing anybody's ever said. I need to put that out there.
No, I totally appreciate you coming on, man. I've been seeing your stuff online for a while. Really, really great content you're putting out there. Appreciate everything you do for the industry. And, selfishly, I'm just stoked to have you on here to kind of tap into your brain. So I appreciate you coming on and chatting with us today, man.
No, absolutely. I appreciate it. And it's, it's really a lot of why I do the show at the end of the day is I just want to put the real information out there. I feel like in today's day and age with social media and everything else, there's just so much garbage out there, Alex, that at the end of the day, man, we need more people who are active in the industry to put the right information out there because, like, man, at the end of the day, I just want to see people stay in business. I feel like it's hard enough to make it in trucking, let alone these individuals who are getting sold a bill of goods from people who don't even do the job or have never even done it.
Yep. 100%, man. Well, let's start here. Obviously, people should know you, but for those that don't, shame on them. But if you could, let's start out with just who you are and your role in the industry today, man.
Yeah, so my name is Chris Jolly, and I'm the founder of Freight Coach Logistics and also Freight Coach Enterprises. And Freight Coach Enterprises is it's just the parent company of my media stuff that I do on the podcast, which is ironically the Freight Coach podcast. So if you have any questions about branding, you guys, that's how you do it. You want to have everything under one umbrella. But I've been in the industry indirectly my entire life. I actually come from a family of truck drivers. My great grandparents, when they immigrated here from Germany back in the 1930s, they started a trucking company in Iowa. And my dad drove. He was an owner op for almost 40 years. Uncles drove. My brother-in-law currently drives. So it's I've been around this. This is all I've ever known. And I've personally been in the industry for almost 20 years now. 15 of those as a broker. And, I just all I know is freight at the end of the day. I truly have a passion for it. Because I've seen, I've just seen how much good this industry can do. And it's literally fed me my entire life from a literal and physical standpoint.
I love that, man. Well, we always kind of start out from the point of what brought you into this industry. And obviously we're hearing about a lot of that background, that family history, but is that what tied it in for you, or why this industry for you? Why'd you make that leap yourself?
I wanted, when I first was I was in college and I always wanted to work in trucking. I didn't know, when I was a kid, I wanted to drive like my dad. I feel with most little boys, they grow up wanting to do what their dad did. And, my dad always told me, work with your brain, not your back. And, it was one of those things that I feel like every father wants more for what they're doing for their kids at the end of the day. And, that was one of those things where my dad loved the job. He just didn't want that life for me, is what he said. And, because it comes with a lot of sacrifice, right? I feel like a lot of individuals out there, especially on the broker side, they don't understand what drivers go through on a day-to-day basis out there, and the sacrifice, and, the missed birthdays and holidays and kids sporting events and plays and all of that stuff that comes along with it. And, so it was one of those where when I was in college and, I graduated and I wanted to get into trucking, and a buddy of mine's friend was a ops manager for, which is what was XPO. And I just got hired over the phone, and I'm from Wisconsin originally. And I literally packed up my truck. I headed out to Reno, Nevada. My older brother had lived there or was living there at the time as well. So I'd like just moved in with him and became a broker and just learned the industry from the ground up from that perspective.
That's fantastic, man. Now, talking about, your dad and whatever, maybe not wanting you to jump into the industry like that. What was his experience from your opinion? I mean, he spent some years in it. Did he take it like a quality experience away from it? Did he struggle with it?
No, he was self-employed for almost 40 years. Like he was, I think a lot of it, he his personality, man, like he couldn't have worked in an office. Like he
Yeah.
just didn't. That's just not. That just wasn't him. And he was that nomad personality. He loved the open road. He loved being out there and working and driving trucks. He wanted. I think what it was is there was some he had some demons just like everybody, and I think there was he didn't want me to go down that path
Mhm. Yeah.
of certain things. So I think that's really what it was. And he also he was a realist about how things are. And I like when I had first started my podcast, for example, I had asked him, I'm like, Dad, I want you to come on the show. Like, I want to interview you. Like, you drove in the 70s and the 80s before most people were even born who are in the industry right now.
Right.
And he was just like, Chris, he's like, there's no point. I'm like, what do you mean there's no point? He's like, everything you're talking about today was an issue back then. Nobody's done anything about it. He's like, so why would I come on there and say anything if it's just going to fall on deaf ears? And that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks because like I had like just started my podcast back then in 2020. And I'm like, come on, Dad, like you drove for 35 years. This would be awesome. But like it kind of hit me a little bit. And I'm like, damn, I guess I never really thought of it that way. And that was one of those things that, it was and it still is to this day. It's a very big driving force of like, man, if we're going to fix this industry, it has to come from within. Nobody is going to come in from out of this industry and actually make a meaningful change in it. It's got to come from the people who eat, sleep, and bleed freight.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, those are the ones who are going to make the most impactful differences out there, not the person who's like, again, I'm not knocking on anybody, but like just the guy who's coming in, who's VC backed, who plan is to exit in 5 years. It's like, no, man, I want those legacy family owned companies. It's individuals like us that need to step up and do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome hearing you say that, but like, that whole aspect there, the people that eat, sleep and breathe, like this industry. And then, the whole aspect of, your father being like, work with your mind, not your back. All this is coming in because I'm like, he was doing all that though, right? Like it's better. And there's layers to the industry, but especially when you get out of the whole company driver and you take on that business yourself as that owner operator. I mean, I props go out to those guys because not only is trucking, I mean, it you can do really well in the industry, but it takes its toll at the same time. Like trucking is what it is. It's not the easiest industry out there. But in that owner operator space, I mean, you're taking that office and you're putting wheels on it and all the other responsibilities that come around that. I mean, you're working with your back, but you're working with your brain to be successful in that. I mean, quite frequently, I don't know, it's just a really impressive role for me. How was that for you growing up and seeing your family involved in that? You kind of getting to see, the behind the scenes and everything, what it looks like. Like, what impact did that have on you?
I mean, seeing him come off the road, for whether it was a week at a time or 2 weeks at a time, and essentially throwing his trip settlement on the on the table and having my mom start breaking it apart and organizing all of his receipts and
Yeah.
making sure everything was uploaded properly. And again, he was driving before technology and automation was a thing. It's like now with my business, I have a QuickBooks app, right? Like I just snap
Right.
receipts right away and it auto fills itself out and it's itemized properly and all of that stuff, right? So it's like I don't have to worry about any of those things. But you see him come off the road, he's asleep pretty much the whole time because he's up 14, 15, 16 hours a day for 2 weeks straight. Minimal sleep, minimal rest. He comes home and he sleeps the whole time, and then essentially he was back out on the road again. And it's tough, right? Because it's like you want your dad to like come hang out with you. And as a little boy, I didn't understand it. As a almost 40-year-old man now. I get it, right? Like I understand he was out there doing what he had to do to provide for his family. And it's like, I mean, dude, we were never hungry, we were never homeless. He
Yeah.
did what he had to do to make sure we were taken care of. And I have the utmost respect for it, right? Like I'll always say my dad was the hardest working man I've ever met in my life.
Yeah. Sounds like it, man. 100%. That's awesome. Props to him. Well, I want to dive into a little bit of your experience as well here, right? Like you've trained brokers, you've built 3PLs, you've coached companies. What are some of the early lessons that still guide you and how you do business today?
Man, there's a lot to unpack with that. There's a lot of stuff, but I feel like our number one core value in my brokerage is do the right thing. And that's a subjective statement to a lot of individuals out there. But I've been talking about this a lot on my show. Is like at the end of the day, I view my company as a hospitality organization that just happens to move truckloads. Because like I have to make sure my customer's happy, but I got to make sure my carrier's happy at the same time. Because
Very true.
like I'm still, and I'll put this challenge out to your audience as well. I'm still waiting for the freight brokerage to come to me with a business plan that operates as a freight broker does without trucks. Because like again, there's a big disconnect out there, and I'm not immune from any of those behaviors in my career that drivers hate brokers for. All right, like I've done that, and I've learned from that.
Yeah.
But my thing is now is doing the right thing. It's simple, right? Like it's calling shippers, it's calling receivers, it's verifying that loads are ready, it's verifying that like they have the right equipment to offload the products. So inside of my organization, we are 99% flatbed, right? Flat step, Conestoga, RGN, OD, a little bit of OD. But like not everybody has the right equipment to offload the product upon arrival. So it's like we go up, it's an SOP for us, but like it is, how do we keep this as seamless as possible? How do we keep this as fluid as possible? So when our driver shows up at the shipper, the product's ready for him. They know it needs tarps. They know it needs edge protectors. All of that's verified. We've called the receiver. We've verified their hours of operation. They have the right equipment to offload the driver. We go and do that on every single shipment because I look at it as, I have to make sure my customer's happy. We're delivering to their customers 99% of the time. And
Right.
those drivers are a direct representation of my customer. So why would I set them up for failure? Why would I not do something to make sure that, hey, this shipment is going to go as seamless as possible? And if something goes wrong, we're on the phone, we're dealing with it. We're making sure everybody's on the same page with that. And those are some of those early lessons that I wish I would have applied on every single shipment, because 90% of my issues that I was faced earlier in my career have since gone away by taking this extremely proactive approach to making sure all of this is done all the time. And everybody is aware of the requirements before they accept a load with us, right? Like
Mm.
I'm going to talk to the driver. I'm going to make sure that they are who they say they are. Everything is there. Hey, just so you know, this load needs tarps. Are you aware of that? You are. Perfect. Hey, you need edge protectors. Do you have them? You do. Awesome. And then we just go through all of that stuff, because I hate surprises. And I know drivers hate surprises at the end of the day. So I want to make sure, like, hey, let's take a couple of minutes on the front end to make sure that we're all aligned here. And so it's like it's just those little things like that that I feel like we have to make sure everybody's set up for success, because as a broker, if you don't do stuff like that, eventually your customer is going to look outside of you to move their freight. Because if you're causing them more issues, it doesn't matter what you're quoting them, how much money you're air quote saving them, if you can't execute upon it.
Yeah. You touch on some fantastic stuff there, and it's really making me think. And this is kind of why I love this podcast that I do, right? Because we go out there and not just interview truckers, but all around the industry, because those people that are moving out from that, company position, going into their own company, growing
Mhm.
a fleet, it can be in a completely different ball game, right? And I think there's huge value in understanding how brokers truly work, how all these different positions around the industry truly work, and getting some insight from that. It's making me think here, because there's a lot of other parts of the industry that I think, when you've been in for a while, you just expect it's the known, right? And then somebody fresh coming in and taking on that business aspect, it's like, Well, you kind of, guessing and so forth. If we could back up just a little bit and just for somebody fresh into the industry, like what does the broker space look like? What's a day to day for you? And what's something that you want drivers to really know about your side of the industry?
Um, I think one thing I want drivers to know about what brokers do is the reputation that brokers have out there are earned. It's not a fallacy. Like drivers aren't crazy when they're frustrated with drivers, but we don't all operate like that, right?
Sure.
And I want drivers to know that one thing. I've never received a bill of lading from my customer that doesn't have weights, doesn't have commodities, doesn't have piece counts. I've never heard of a work-in before that's like either it's an appointment or they're first come, first serve. They're not ready for you when they show up. More times than not, the broker failed on a load and you're the one who's hung out to dry. But not everybody out there operates like that, right? So it's like when I'm vetting a carrier to haul our freight and I am asking a bunch of questions on the front end, it's because I have a real shipment that I need to make sure that we're all on the same page, because I don't want to send you in to pick up a load, you thinking 6-foot tarps work, because that's all you have, but it actually needs 8-foot tarps, and then you get kicked out of the shipper because you don't have the right equipment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think, from my perspective, that's where a lot of it comes from. But I also understand that, because I talk to drivers all the time too, man. And unfortunately, we are the anomaly out there in the market who sets them up for success. There's not a lot of individuals out there and operations out there that do that. But rest assured, flatbed drivers, I'm working to get set up with every shipper in North America, so you guys don't have to deal with that crap anymore. But I just think that, from my perspective as a broker, if you're new to the industry, you got to choose a niche and really dive deep in it and become a subject matter expert. I just think that the days of being a generalist are done unless you're working for a top 10 broker out there. Just go to the Transport Topics top 10. Unless you're working for a company of that size who has the capabilities to execute air freight, intermodal freight, ocean freight, OTR, LTL, all of that stuff at a very high level, don't put yourself in that situation, because it used to work back in the day, but that's just not the case anymore. People want subject matter experts. And I say that because I'm cold calling shippers every single day. I've called shippers this morning. And when I talk to people, the things that stand out is like, no, hey, this is what we do. This is what we specialize in. We only do flatbed, open deck freight. That's all I touch. If your freight is 70% dry van, I want nothing to do with it, right? Like I want that method. And I do that. And I say that because of everything that I was describing earlier in this show about making sure that our drivers are set up for success. I have a very high probability of knowing tarps, edge protectors, dunnage, crane offload, job site offload, whatever that looks like, just by the commodity on my prospects' websites. And I think like it just helps you stand out in a saturated crowd, because freight brokerage, trucking is highly competitive. There are tens of, not 20s of thousands of companies out there, all competing for the same market share. And the market's big, right? But I look at it like this as well. Flatbed alone is like $60 billion a year in available freight. 60 billion. There's not one company out there that does $60 billion worth of flatbed, or even $2 billion worth of like, there's so much opportunity. Why go and do everything for, cause like it's just that old saying, man, if you're everything to everyone, you're no one to everyone. And I feel like that's just one of those business lessons that I feel like you can build $100 million a year company, then you can start looking at something else. But up until that point, there's no need. There's too much opportunity that's out there.
That's an interesting thought, man. I like how you frame that. It's making me think here, and I'm outside the box. So tell me if I'm wrong, but by niching down and kind of having that dedicated style of freight that you do in that way, I mean, obviously you got to make sure you can link it and stuff, but in that way of not trying to drive deadhead, having loads both ways, does that make it easier ultimately if you can book those, that you're doing the same type of freight, you're loading it the same, like instead of switching from all these various different types and trying to guesstimate what the next hurdle is going to be, you keep some kind of consistency there?
Yeah, we keep the same consistency because we also operate with the same carriers as well, right? Like 80 to 85% of our freight that we move is booked with 5 or less trucking companies.
Wow.
They get first crack at everything. If you ever see my name or my company's name posting a load, it's because my core carriers don't have capacity in the area. That's the only way that it's out there. And when we do that, because again, it's all about that familiarity, right? Like I want that buy-in. I want that trucking company, that owner operator to be like, no, I like working with Chris and his team because they pay well, they pay me fast, the freight's ready, and they keep me rolling. And I want that because that we're in an extended market of overcapacity. At the end of the day, there's a lot of trucks that are out there. It's not always going to be that way.
Yeah.
There's going to come a time when carriers it's going to be a carrier market again. I've operated in them. I know them, but I have all the faith in the world that all of our drivers that we have been working with now almost on a daily, if not weekly basis for the last 3 years are going to remember us, and they're going to give us first crack at their capacity when things change out there. And I'm trying to play the long game with it. But again, it's just that familiarity and that comfort that comes along with it. Because I feel like in today's day and age with fraud, identity theft, all of that stuff that's going on, like there's great software that's out there, man. But the only way to truly verify it is working with the same guys time and time again. That are legit. And I feel like once you can do that, man, there's that's that sweet spot that we're all looking for. Is yeah, you know what? It's worth the additional money that I pay. I could make more money as a broker if I went to the spot market every single time. But man, I don't like that. I don't want to do that stuff. Why look outside of my network when I have quality drivers who do what they say they're going to do and they know the load requirements for everything? Why would I want to go and break out to make an extra $100? Like, it's just not worth it.
Right. You touched on some great points there. And again, you're talking to these guys all day, every day. Plus with the podcast, you've had some chances to have some really amazing insight and gather that data and that personal relationship out there. Thinking about these guys going as company drivers into owner operators, you're taking on that business, as a whole. You mentioned cash flow and kind of the money aspect of the game, and that becomes a whole different ballpark going from that company driver to running your own business, right? Do you see maintaining a healthy cash flow in your business as, one of the most difficult or critical parts of, sustaining within the environment, the industry, or kind of what have you seen out there in that regard?
It's the only thing that matters in business is cash flow.
Yeah.
Like I would say having a financial understanding about what you're getting, like knowing how your money works. I mean, I've mentioned this countless times. The best move I made in business was hiring my CPA. And he had me running my business like a business, because business financials and personal financials are two very different things out there. And if you don't know how to manage your cash flow properly, you're going to be broke really quick. And then you're going to be on the hook for hundreds of thousands of dollars of loans, because if you're going to go out on your own, you buy a truck, buy a trailer. Let's just say for easy math, you're at $250,000 right there. You're personally guaranteeing all of that stuff, right?
Right.
Because you have no business credit when you first start out. It takes a long time to build that up. And then especially if it's your first loan, it might take 2 or 3 loans before a bank lets your business take on the risk and not the person at that point, right? So I look at it as you need to understand that everything's going to be personally guaranteed for a very long time as the owner of that business. And, from my perspective, like with factoring companies out there, having access, like money costs something, right? Like if you don't have cash, money costs something. Your credit card has a 25% interest rate that's on it. If your bank gives you a revolving line of credit, there's at least 8 to 10% interest rate that's put on that. So it's like, if you look at it like with factoring, for example, you can get like, again, depending on it, right? It's like 1.5 to 3% on your money at that point, right? So again, unless you have cash flow and a lot of cash in the bank, you're going to need it, right? Like you're going to need it at some point. And it is a very great tool to use, because I also look at it too, like with you're working with a factoring company, for example, they're managing your back office, right? They're making sure you're getting paid.
Yeah.
They're financially invested in that, right? And then they can help you run cleaner books at that point. And I just feel like it's such a great thing to have, right? Because like again, unless you have a blank checkbook where you have somebody just depositing money, you have to worry about it, then of course, no, don't give anybody any money from that perspective. But the reality is it's a very cash intensive industry, as are most. And you're going to have to get creative in one way or another. And you need to have an understanding of how to properly manage your cash flow, or you will be broke.
Yeah. No, fantastic points, man. And like you were saying there, cash is king at the end of the day. And this is one of those industries we've touched on that, you can make really great money in, but you can spend a lot of money as well. And, if you're not responsible with that bottom line and managing that, like that'll put you under really, really fast. One thing I'm thinking about there, you mentioned factoring companies, and I'm thinking back to, your dad driving in that truck, coming home with the reconciliation sheet and all that. Like that's huge, right? Because when you can get a partnership like that, it does offer you some kind of assistance in the business. It takes a little bit of that burden off. You can focus on the road and not have to, be in that driving office 24/7. Was that something that was around like when your dad was driving? Did he ever deal with factoring companies, or kind of
I
how that?
honestly can't remember at this point, but like I would assume, right? Because access to capital is always a thing
In some
at the
form or another.
yeah. And I think though that, you know, you are balancing being an operator and a business owner when you go out on your own, especially when you're
Yeah.
a solo, when you're an owner operator, or if you're like me, I'm a broker. I have me and my business partner that's out there. We're bootstrapping all of this stuff, right? Like we have no outside investment because for me, long term, I want to own myself. I want to own 100% of my business, my future. I don't want to be paying somebody off throughout time, you know?
Yeah.
So I look at it though, where you know you really have to balance that. But it's necessary, and you have to remember like this is what you signed up for when you said I'm going to go out and stake my claim and try and build my dream. Like
Right.
you signed up for all of this stuff, and you know you need to have an actual understanding about what you're getting yourself into. From that, you need to understand a lot of those terms that I was throwing out there. Personal guarantee on loans. That's one thing that throws a lot of people off. They're like, "What do you mean I'm personally guaranteed and I have an LLC?"
Right.
Doesn't matter. Your LLC is worthless. You know, like you got to build that stuff up.
Yeah. To that point, we were talking a little bit about cash flow there, and I'm thinking, obviously budgets get tight, right? And this is going to be from your perspective as a brokerage. There may be, some difference of opinion there for that, owner operator, fleet owner, whatever. But when stuff happens out there, budgets get tight. What do you see as, oh, what am I going to say? Priorities here, right? Like when budgets get tight, what can afford to be cut out? What is like a must? You've got to maintain that at all costs.
So this is a practice that I think most people need to apply even when times are good. Like you need to take a scalpel to your P&L, which is your profit and loss statement. If nobody's ever put that out there for you, and then again, no shame. And for people who are listening, this is why I always take stuff down at a certain level because like I didn't know I had heard of a P&L, but I didn't know what it actually meant until I had a CPA explain it all to me. And so I watch my money like a hawk.
Mm.
Like to me, it's like I want to operate as lean as possible for as long as possible. I want to make my dollars, because again, if you're bootstrapping your business, man, you gotta make a dollar stretch to $10 worth of value. And if you're going to be paying for a service or a subscription out there, that better have an ROI that comes along with it. And I think where a lot of businesses get themselves in trouble is they sign up for so much stuff, and it's like some of these companies, they have it down to a science, right? Like if it's only an $80 transaction every month, most people don't notice it when they're paying their credit card bill at the end of the month,
Right.
compared to $1,000 every 3 days for fuel, where it gets buried in there. But again, those things add up quick. And if you got 3 or 4 of them throughout the year, I mean, we're looking at $2,000 to $3,000. Like that's a truck payment
Yeah.
one month in like wasted subscriptions. So it's like, that's why I think like you have to work with a CPA or a bookkeeper, or maybe your factoring company might have some of these services along where it's like, hey, what did I spend? this month. All right. And then just go down that list. You have your fixed costs and you have your variable costs that come in every single month. And I know fuel can kind of be a fixed and a variable cost depending on, where you're running and what it's at. But like, I look at it is you got to go through that with a fine tooth comb and find out like, what can I cut? Because everybody's guilty of this. I'm guilty of this, is signing up for a bunch of technology and software that you think you need. And then you just don't use it at that level. And even if you paid for it for a year, because some of these people are like, oh, $250 for the year. If you're not using it for 60 or 90 days, cancel that subscription. Don't be like, oh, I'll cancel it when it's supposed to renew, because you won't remember. And it's just those little things like that. It's like,
And they bank on that.
yeah, it's like it's death by a thousand cuts, man. Is you overlook a lot of that stuff, and then that'll bleed out your organization.
100%, man. Yeah. And again, like they literally bank on that. They want you to forget that that it's renewing. And even then, they're getting trickier and trickier. Half these places, it's not just as simple as clicking unsubscribe anymore. It's they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. But 100%, man, you make that switch, you are a business owner, and there is a lot that comes along with that. Now, you've had the opportunity, and we share this affinity with our shows, right? You've had the opportunity to talk to so many people out there in the industry and have some amazing conversations. And that's really what sparked my interest years ago. I've worked in the marketing side of the industry for a long time, worked for years with a carrier, and always, having those opportunities to interview the drivers and stuff is ultimately what led to this, and being able to branch out and talk to people throughout the industry. You've had a longer time at it, a bigger reach in the industry. What are you hearing out there, and what have you gained from those conversations that maybe you didn't know or think about prior?
Oh man, that's tough to answer, because it's like I've talked to so many people from so many walks in this industry that I think that there's a lot more people out there that care than get recognition. I think that is one thing that I will say, and I look at it is on social media, in media, stuff like that, like. If it bleeds, it reads, and only the bad stuff get the recognition out there. And that's why I have taken the strategy that I've taken in it, because it's like, I mean, I could easily 10 or 20x my engagement and downloads if I went off the rails on some of the things that some people do.
Sure.
But that's self-serving for me in the short term. And eventually it's just like the dopamine wears off and you get more and more over the line with stuff. And it's not marketable for the strategy that I'm trying to do. And, I just want to put the right information out there for people, right? Like I look at it, as a bootstrap founder myself, I didn't always have the money to go to a trade show to learn about certain things in the industry. And, and I think about my old man and a lot of his friends growing up that were all owner ops. They can't shut their business down for a week to go to a trade show to find this stuff out. So it's like, why don't we create content that these guys can, listen to? They got a lot of windshield time. Like how great would it be to be able to have some quality information come in their way by people who walk that life, right? Like explaining to some, like I have some guys from the insurance industry that come on my show and they break down, this is what contingent cargo means. This is what liability means. These are exclusion lists. And if you're hauling freight and you might be under an exclusion list, like this is how you double check that stuff. And there, it's just like actual tangible strategies. And then, I have another guy on the truck finance side of things. He comes in often and like, hey guys, this is how you can better prepare yourself to scale your fleet. If you want to go from 1 to 5 trucks, this is how I did it with one of my clients. This is how I took one of my clients from 5 to 20 trucks. And this is how we structured things. And it's just talking about things like that are applicable to the 90% of the industry, right? And like one of my taglines is this show is for the 90% of the industry that gets 10% of the recognition. Because all the large logos, again, I'm not here to knock on anybody, but they get all the recognition out there and they put out great information, but that's 50,000 steps ahead of what those top 10 trucking companies are doing. Are 50,000 steps ahead of what that one truck owner operator needs to go to do to get to 2 trucks, right? Like there's a lot of stuff out there that is applicable, but what can they do now inside of their business? And, so it's like, I just think that the more and more people that put their stories out there and they're like the ones that actually were successful in it, and they're not just trying to like backdoor sell you a course or some consulting thing, where it's like that. We need to highlight more of that stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's one of those things. That's what we try to touch on here is that mentorship aspect. But there's so much that information out there that people have lived and learned throughout the time, especially for those coming into the industry. There's no need to have to entirely reinvent the wheel on this stuff. There's people out there that have learned stuff the hard way and would probably do it differently now. And again, yeah, it's hard to make it to those trade shows, but if you can get in contact or get in front of a screen that has somebody with that lived and learned information, I mean, at the end of the day, one, it's going to impact your business, being able to see stuff a different way, but also it's going to make the industry better, which makes the country, the world, everything better. I mean, this industry is the backbone of society. Like if it cripples, I don't think many people really think of the magnitude of what that actually means. And it's like spider veins of looking how everything of what this industry touches. It's literally the blood of society, right? So to be able to improve that and kind of work together, crowdsource, if you will, some of that information to bring it back, I think only makes the world a better place. With that being said, in a general sense here, what is your take on mentorship and how important is it to this industry, especially for somebody jumping into that owner operator space?
It's of the utmost importance, right? Like it's, I look at it, even if it's not trucking specific mentorship, but it's business mentorship
Yeah.
by somebody who's built a real company before. And that's the thing, right? It's getting harder and harder to tell who's legit and who's not from like the mentorship space. But I look at it is like these guys who are 20, 30 years self-employed, to be able to have somebody like that in your back pocket that you can learn from,
Yeah.
like that is what's going to keep you in business. And it might have taken them 20 years to learn something, but their perspective can help you learn it in 5 and stuff like that. And just think about the savings that's going to come along with it. But, it's so important to learn from the people who have done what you're looking to do out there. And it's overlooked by so many people. They don't want to pay for mentorship or an entrepreneurship group or even just simple business books or stuff like
Yeah.
that. They just overlook it. They don't want to do it. They don't want to invest the time in it. But I think that it's a major miss by a lot of people because I don't know a lot of people out there who have that successful person kind of in their corner that they can reach out to, right? Because
Yeah.
everybody's got an opinion, man. And that's the hard part is like everybody who's close to you has an opinion on what you should or shouldn't do. And I don't think everybody has ill intent behind what they're saying, but if they've never done it, stop
Right.
taking their advice. Like I instituted this policy in my life when I was at the end of last year. Um, I was done taking fitness advice from people who were in worse shape than me. I'm not going to take business advice from somebody who's never built a business before. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to take financial advice from somebody who's more broke than I am. And when you put that as like your standards, it gets eerily quiet out there because now everybody who had an opinion before, you stopped listening to it.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, like that's the gift and the curse of social media, man, is everybody's got an opinion. And you can spend a couple grand on a nice camera and a mic and you can sound pretty freaking legit,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that you're good. Like the information's right.
So true, man. So true. So we had another guest on recently, Chemistry Howard, and she kind of came up with the same stuff there, right? She was talking about mentors in the industry, and she said, "You know what? The problem is everybody's got 2 cents. Show me your miles before you show me your opinion. Show me those 10 years that you got in the industry and not the 6 months before I would take that with value." And there's so much truth with that because in today's day and age, I mean, everyone's always had something to say,
Yeah.
but in today's day and age, like you've said, everyone's an influencer, everyone's out there. You've got to qualify the information that you're assuming, because yeah, you get led down the wrong path. That'll lead bad places real quick when it comes to business.
No, absolutely, man. And it's actually one of those, man, I hate like I don't hate that people will call me an influencer because like I take it as it's like, yes, I'm trying to influence people for the right reasons
Sure.
out there, but like I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business builder. Like
Right.
I have real companies that we're doing real stuff, and I've been doing this job for a very long time. But yeah, man, that's the thing is everybody's got an opinion. And I feel like most people out there are trying to charge people for every little thing out there. And like I'm very fortunate on my show. I have advertisers, right? Like so like I don't charge people to come on my show. I don't do any of that stuff. I'm not looking to gain it. I'm just looking to tell some good stories out there and help some people. And that's what it's going to boil down to. And but yeah, not everybody has that that stance on a lot of this stuff.
I love that, man. Well, let's bring it back to your space a little bit here. What advice can you give somebody wanting to launch or scale a brokerage in today's market?
It's going to take a lot longer than you want. It's going to be a lot harder than you think. Uh, there is a lot. This is the longest sales cycles I've ever seen in my career. I just think that you need to start though, and you need to understand that it's not as easy as social media likes to make it seem, where you just cold call a couple of shippers and all of a sudden you're a millionaire.
Yeah.
It took us 3 years, and because we started ours in 2023, like essentially January 1 of 2023 is when we started. And I started at that time for a reason, because I knew we were at like 2 years in the downturn at that, or like a year into the downturn. And I was like, all right, we got like another year of this before things are going to start to pick up, right? Because most down cycles last, 18 to 24 months for the most part. And here we are 36 months later, and it's still the freight recession and everything else that you want to call it. But I think that most people need to tether their expectations, but they also need to understand, like, you're not doing anything wrong. Like if you're actually making your calls, doing your outreach, trying to work for your company, you're not doing anything wrong. The rejection happens to us all. And I try and bring this up all the time. I get hung up on too in my cold calls. All right. I still do. I got hung up on 3 times this week. It's part of it. But again, it's like there's some really good resources that are out there. You need to, as fast as possible, you need to build a system of productivity for your daily actions. And if you've never made sales calls before, because I think that's one thing that a lot of people, they go out on their own, they realize, oh, I've never actually cold called before. What do I do here? I look at it as you got to set a number, and you got to hit that number every single day. So if I was starting over from scratch, I had nothing, I had no industry experience, or I had minimal industry experience, and I was going out on my own, I would set a cold call number that I had to hit every day. If you have no freight going on, you got to make 20 cold calls. Set that up and then track how long it takes. I don't care if it takes you all 8 hours to start, but track your progress on how you can get it down into a shorter time, and then add 5. All right. I'm a big advocate of just adding 5 more dials onto your day. So once you take those 20 calls and say you get it down to 2 hours, add 5. All right. And then just work your way up, because you need to build a system that you can follow, because anybody can do something when they're motivated. It's when the last thing you want to do is pick up the phone and make more sales calls. That is where the discipline has been built into you, that as much as you don't want to do it, you're still going to show up and put in the work. And I think, like, in as simplest of terms, man, that's how I would do it. That's the best piece of advice. And then it would be back to choosing that niche. Have as many similar phone calls as you possibly can. Full truckload, food, reefer, whatever that looks like. Just call those shippers and start in your backyard.
You dropped an interesting point there. Can you qualify the add 5 aspect? I mean, is that something that you've just gained from experience over time, or where does that come from?
Yeah, I mean, I just came up with that, man, because I feel like people try and do too much too soon. And then they'll make 100 cold calls 3 days in a row, and then they're like, "Oh, I didn't win any business. It must be something I'm doing wrong." And they stop, right? Where it's like, for me, and it's just like with a lot of, if I go back over the past 5 years of being self-employed, it's small incremental bumps in business, right? That's where the growth comes. It's not a home run every single time. It's a bunch of bunts and singles that happen. So it's like, if you can just get a little bit more intense with your outreach every single day over time, before you know it, you're making 30 dials in an hour. And then you're like, damn, I made 120 calls this week, or 150 calls this week, when I would only get 20 in the week when I first started. that just shows that progress that comes along with it. I'm about those small digestible bites because you got to keep showing up when you don't want to. And that's my thing is if you just add a little bit more onto it, you push it just a little bit more, before you know it, man, your productivity is going through the roof.
Absolutely. Well, we've covered a ton today, and I'd love to ask you if you'd come back on for another episode, because I feel like there's so much more we can talk about. But I do want to touch on before we go, man. You talk to so many people, and you're talking about the freight recession, the industry today. Within all those conversations you have, what do you see for the foreseeable future of the industry?
I think that it's going to continue to perform the way it has been for a while now. I think it's going to probably be this way in all of 2026. I think everything is hinging on the Fed's lowering interest rate
Mm,
down to where people are able to use money for less interest. And I think when that happens, I feel like the consumer confidence is going to start to increase. But I think a lot of people, the truest sign of a market recovery is when new construction starts. Like once flatbed starts to increase, then
yeah,
people can expect the downstream effect to come along with it. I think that there's a lot hinging, like I said, on interest rates, and there's a lot hinging on tariffs and ELP right now. Like at the end of the day, there's more. It's in simplest form, supply and demand. There's excess capacity that's on the road right now. I don't want to see anybody lose their job or their livelihood, but
right.
people need to leave. Like trucking companies need to leave. Drivers need to leave to balance that back out to where the current freight volumes are. The only other thing that could happen is if there's a massive gang rush of freight that comes into the market through imports and everything else. And that's why I say with the Feds lowering interest rates, that could, spark a recovery. But I feel like until that happens, we're going to be sitting idle.
Fantastic insight. Well, man, we've covered a lot, and we're going to twist your arm and get you back here. With that said, anything you feel like we've missed today?
No, man. I think like at the end of the day, if you're out there and you feel like everything's struggling in your business, this is what you signed up for, right? If you're self-employed, if you're an owner operator, if you're a solopreneur, whatever that looks like, and it's hard, this is what you signed up for. All right. Like making, I think it's less than 9% of businesses make more than $1 million a year in revenue. So if you're building and you're not alone, right? Like and you just need to keep showing up. And that's why I'm just a big systems guy at the end of the day is it's very tough to quantify your progress early on when you're seemingly not getting anywhere. And that's why I just keep it into a couple of key tasks.
Absolutely. Man, you have been awesome. I've really, really enjoyed our chat today. We've covered so many great topics. Like I said, going to twist your arm, get you back in here. But before we let you go, I want to give you an opportunity for some shameless plugs. How can people find out more about you, get in touch with you, find your show, all that jazz?
Yeah, absolutely. Thefreightcoach.com. You can go to our website. You just look for the Freight Coach on any major social media platform. You'll find me on there. You can send me a DM. I personally respond to all of that. Or my podcast is on iTunes and Spotify. Just the Freight Coach podcast is on there. And then if you want to reach out to the show at all, just email podcast@thefreightcoach.com.
Fantastic. Well, man, thank you again so much for letting us take some time out of your day today and pick your brain. Thanks for all that you do for the industry and all the content that you're putting out there, man. It's really awesome stuff and means the world.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yep. Everyone out there watching, thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, go check out the Freight Coach. Sorry, I got to get your name right there. Within that, thanks so much. Be safe out there. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.